Hello Israel, it's Red Planet once again with another video. Doing my research, Israel, I looked up on this video about the lady talking about black people that was in the Bible. Seemed pretty interesting. So let's get into it, Israel, see what she got to say about it.
Normally our Morey, Milton, teaches each Shabbat, and I rather enjoy sitting there and listening to him teach and commenting when appropriate, but he asked me to do this today. And this is really a presentation that stems from our Blacks in the Bible series that I did a while back. But really, the focus is the true identity of the Hebrews. That's what we're going to be talking about today, and it's an appropriate topic to discuss before we go into our Ten Commandments series. As Milton read this morning in Exodus 20, we read all 10 commandments, and you see that the Most High spoke those commandments to the nation of Israel. It's very important to understand who the nation of Israel is. Not that any man or woman is exempt from the requirements in Torah. However, it's very important to know who Israel is, because Israel were the ones that actually heard it from the mouth of the Most High. So we're going to be talking about that today. Now, let's see if the clicker works. Do I turn it on? Do I push it? It's on? Yay! Okay, so the goals of the presentation today are to, number one, prove there were some black people in the Bible. Okay? Because some people don't know that, they doubt it. All the movies, all the pictures we see don't necessarily depict that. Two, show that there were always black people among the nation of Israel. Some people will admit there were black folks, but that they were slaves all the time. No, black people were in Israel. Finally, next we're going to explain the history and the geography of Israel so that we can identify who Israel is. And then at the end, we're going to explore the prophetic relationship between biblical Israel and modern-day blacks. That is what we're going over today. So let's jump right into it. Genesis chapter 10, I recommend that everybody become very familiar with Genesis chapter 10. It frequently is referred to as the Table of Nations because it lays out the origin of all people after the flood. As you know, there was a great flood, and the only people that survived were Noah and his family. And in that family, he had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And from those 3 sons, we have all the people that we see here today. So Shem, you'll see to the far left, was the father of Eber. And from Eber comes our father Abraham. We always refer to Father Abraham. It's very important to know that Abraham comes from Noah's son, Shem. Okay? And I'll go into the meaning of Eber later, but just know that Eber is the root of Hebrew, or many people believe that it is. Ham was the father of Cush, also known as Ethiopia, Mizraim, also known as Egypt, Put, also known as Libya, and Canaan. And lastly, Japheth, we will see, is known as the father of the Gentiles, or is at least referred to in Genesis chapter 10. I'm going to quickly show you a map of the territories occupied by these 3 sons. I got this off blueletterbible.org, so you guys can look at it too. That top red portion, predominantly around the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, is the territory of Japheth. Beneath that, you will see blue territory, primarily around the Arabian Peninsula, and that is the territory of Shem, although I have seen other maps that will put some of Shem's descendants in Asia as well. And then the yellow territory is Africa. And right here you're seeing only the northeastern corner of Africa, but as we will see going through this, Ham took over a whole continent of Africa. And then there is a small green portion that I'm not going to talk about a lot, but that is the descendants of Ishmael. That's the territory that Ishmael took over. And of course, blue Shem mixed with yellow Ham, you get green. Okay, so this is just a close-up view in case anybody couldn't see. I know it's hard for the folks who are here, but hopefully the people online, I don't know if they can't see it at all. Okay, sorry about that. All right. But note that Japheth is largely in Europe and Asia Minor, Shem, the Middle East, formerly considered northeastern Africa, and then Ham is mainland Africa. Let's talk about Japheth first. Genesis chapter 10 and verse 2 says, the sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Verse 5 says, from these the coastland peoples of the Gentiles were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language, according to their families, into their nations. It says the coastland peoples of the Gentiles. Let's look again at that map, that red territory of Japheth. You'll see it encompasses the northern Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, and the Caspian Sea. These are largely coastlands with all those seas. These lands now include modern-day Greece, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Romania, Bulgaria, Russia, Ukraine, and the former Soviet territories. In other words, portions of Europe. That's where Japheth and his descendants dwelt. Okay? Now, some people will say that Noah's 3 sons were all different colors. That's what some people say. I'm just putting it out there in the forefront. I think that's a little hard to do if they all share the same DNA. But those that believe that say that Japheth was the white son of Noah, I think they believe that because Japheth settled in Europe, lands that are now occupied predominantly by white people. So I'm just going to put up a little slide here. I'm sorry that people online can't see it, but I wanted to display pictures of people who are children of black parents, what we would consider 100% black, or mixed parents. So the twins, these are literal twins, came out same womb at the same time. On the left, one is black, one is white. To me, the white one looks black, but he thinks of himself as white, so do his parents. They actually came from a black father and white mother. The middle twins, the 2 little girls, came from 2 parents who were biracial. Notice one looks 100% black, the other one looks 100% white. And then the last set on the right, these are black children. Their mother is Brazilian. Actually, both their parents are Brazilian, blacks. And those are their children. Now, you'll see 2 black kids and 2 or 3 what look like white kids. Those kids are actually albino. But you wouldn't know it to look at them because they look just like blonde white people, do they not? All of those people came from the same exact parents. So what am I trying to say? When people say they were all, different, like Noah had 3 sons, they were all different, they're really not. I mean, they're still same DNA, maybe different skin tones, but all black. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me see. Sure. All right, moving on to Ham. I mentioned earlier Ham and all the nations that he gave birth to. I display here their pictures again. In verse 6 of chapter 10, it says, and the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. We're going to go into a lot of detail about Ham. The reason being, everybody admits that Ham was black. Everybody. All the biblical scholars, no matter what color they are, nobody disputes that Ham was a black man and all of his kids were black. So that's why I'm going to spend some time on it. Even though Israel came out of the line of Shem, I need us to understand who Ham is and how Ham relates to Shem. So bear with me. Here's the geography of Ham again. This map only focuses on the northeastern corner of Africa, but I can tell you that Ham's territory took over the whole continent. Let me say this. Ham, they think, means hot. Okay? Makes sense. Africa's pretty hot from what I hear. Haven't been yet. Praying, Yah, hear my cry. All right, the first son of Ham we're going to talk about is Put. Put's just an ancient name for Libya. You see here an ancient depiction of Libyans. I'm going to zoom in here on their faces. Notice their dark skin tone, their braided hair. I mean, not altogether different from people we see with locks today or braided hair or what have you. Those are ancient Libyans. I know we've been focusing a lot on Libyans today. Understand there's been a lot of mixing, a lot of moving around. If you were in the United States 400 years ago, people would have looked a lot different, right, than how they look today. So this is an ancient depiction of Libyans. They were a North African nation. All right, another son of Ham is Canaan. Canaan's descendants occupied the land bordering the eastern Mediterranean or the seacoast nations of Palestine. Today this includes modern Israel, Lebanon, parts of Syria, and Jordan. Here is an ancient depiction of a Canaanite. Okay? Notice, and this was rendered in Egyptian hieroglyphics. Note the afro. And he's captured here tending to what looks to me like a Nubian ibex. And that creature, even today, lives only in northeastern Africa and Israel. That's a Canaanite. Interestingly enough, Canaan also means merchant, according to Strong's. They were the merchant of the sea. And the descendants of the Canaanites included the Phoenicians and the Philistines. So think of Canaanite as merchant, seagoing people. Here is a close-up of a Philistine. Notice his hairdo. I don't know if it's dreads or what, but clearly something only we can do with our hair. All right. Not trying to be difficult, I'm just saying. All right. Misraim, that's the Hebrew for what we now call Egypt. It even says it right there on the map. Misraim. To the west is the land of the Libyans that we now know is Phut. Here are some depictions of Egyptians. Note again the deep brown skin tones, braided hair. It irks me to no end that in every movie, Egyptians are depicted as really tanned white people. And I say that only because, I mean, think about it. Were we to make a movie about ancient Rome or Greece, or let's say Braveheart, and let's say the movie was made, Braveheart, and all the people in the army were black, would that make any sense at all? So again, we love truth for truth's sake. It's not a matter of trying to be better or anything. It's truth for truth's sake. Here are Egyptians as they depicted themselves, all right? And I just want to, I'm not going to go into detail, but again, here are some of their architecture. They still cannot figure out how they built that Great Pyramid of Giza. They tried to do it with modern technology. They could not do it. They have no idea how it was done. The monuments, it's hard to see from where you guys are sitting, but look at the size of those people compared to the size of the monuments. Again, I don't even know that we could do that today. This is Queen Nefertiti off to the left. Look at her skin tone. After however many thousands of years of fade, look at the black color on her hat and how faded that is. So you can imagine how she originally looked. And then again, there's a depiction of, the interior of an Egyptian building, and again, brown skin tone. Truth for truth's sake, people. Egyptians came from Ham. Name means hot in Africa. Okay, moving on. Just gonna move on. A little passionate about this subject. Okay. Another son of Ham is Cush. Cush is literally, the word Cush is literally synonymous with Ethiopia. Wherever you read Cush or Ethiopia in the Bible, they are translating the same exact Hebrew word, which is pronounced Cush. I'm not sure why they sometimes say Ethiopia and why sometimes they say Cush, because it's literally the same Hebrew word. It means black. Ethiopia in Greek means land of the burnt face or skin. This is an ancient picture of an Ethiopian as rendered by the Egyptians. Here again is the land of Cush. It's the northeastern corner of Africa, but it went a lot further south, as a matter of fact. And in fact, I have found a number of very old sources that lead me to wonder if Ethiopia refers to the majority of the continent of Africa and not just the northeastern nation, especially what we know now is Ethiopia. Their borders have been shrunken so much because of European colonization. And the reason I think that, again, hard for you guys to see, but when we put it up online, you'll be able to see it in greater detail. Here is a map that is dated sometime between 1557 and 1771. On the map itself, it says 1557, but some people at US, some researchers, they say it couldn't have been in 1557. Anyway, it's old. And it's a map of Africa, and it says Ethiopia all over it. There's Lower Ethiopia, there's Upper Ethiopia, the whole continent pretty much, certainly everything below the Sahara is referred to as Ethiopia. Okay. And here is another one. It's dated 1683, and Ethiopia again appears over the entire continent of Africa, and the ocean itself is referred to as the Ethiopian Ocean. And I found many maps from the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, where the Atlantic and sometimes, that southern, whatever the Southern Ocean right at the tip of Africa, is called the Ethiopian Ocean. So look it up on your own. But I think it's interesting because we know the first King James Bible was published when? 1611. And it says Ethiopia. Were they referring to a nation, Ethiopia? Were they referring to the entire continent? I don't know. It's just something to think about. And when you're reading scriptures, try and see which are they referring to. Ethiopia may be a lot more than we realize. Okay. I think it's important to talk about Cush, or Ethiopia's lineage. In Genesis chapter 10, verses 8 through 10, it says, Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one of the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yah, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Let me pause here because I don't know who's listening online. Here at Yasharun, we do use the name of the Most High. So in the scriptures where you see Lord, we put back the name that was taken out, and we actually use his name. So we'll say Yahuwah, or we'll say Yah for short. All right? And then just continue on in Genesis chapter 10. It says, from that he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Ir, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is the principal city. We see here a descendant of Cush, the Ethiopians, going out and establishing all of these cities. It's a major emperor, if you want to think of it that way. And let me just point out a few of these words. Babel is just another word for Babylon. So Nimrod actually established the city we call Babylon. He also established Assyria and Nineveh, and we're going to see a picture of Nineveh very soon. Akkad is the root language of ancient Babylon and Assyria, Akkadian. And the prophet Micah later uses the same Nimrod to describe the region of Assyria. So I want you to make connections when you're reading the word. When you see Babylon, think Nimrod, a black man. When you see Assyria, think Nimrod, a black man. Even when you see Nineveh, think Nimrod, a black man. Okay? I want you to get out of this Middle Eastern idea. these places, though they are now called the Middle East and occupied by different people, understand that they were established by black people. Okay? Another thing, even the scholars say that Babylon was the first time in history that humankind channeled its energies towards addressing the needs of the community as a whole. In other words, this is the first time you see cities emerging and empires emerging and people working together to irrigate the land and really do grand scale agriculture. So after the flood, Ham's descendants were kind of like really doing some stuff, all right? Can I say that in assembly, doing some stuff? All right. Here is an artist's depiction of ancient Babylon. This was actually at the time of Nebuchadnezzar, so it was, well after Nimrod established it. But you see, it's quite a grand city. This is another depiction of Nineveh. Again, I mean, it almost looks like a modern city. I mean, some of the buildings you see, like, I don't know, Supreme Court of the United States or something like that. It's very grand. So this is, these are the cities that Nimrod established. Here's Kala, which, until I did the study, I hadn't heard of. Again, just absolutely gorgeous. It reminds me a bit of Egyptian architecture, very decorative. And here are some depictions of Nimrod himself. I always say his beard looks like he has Senegalese twists in it. In some other places it might look like locks, but again, things that we do quite well with our hair. Now, let's talk about some other notable descendants of Ham that appear in Scripture. This is the Ethiopian king Taharka, and I'll just briefly mention Taharka is mentioned in Scripture as coming to the aid of the kingdom of Judah. When Judah was going to be attacked by Assyria, Taharka went up there with his army and actually defended Judah. And so Ethiopia was a friend of Judah, and obviously very mighty because they had an army and chariots and all of that they could come up and help Judah with. History does record Taharka as being a great warrior. He also reigned not only in Ethiopia, but he reigned in Egypt as well. Under him, the two kingdoms were unified. So it's sad that, at least I don't know if the young ones today learn about people like that, but I certainly know that when I was growing up, I had never heard of Taharka, didn't know who he was, but for somebody to be reigning over Egypt and Ethiopia and having chariots at this time, he's a notable person that we should become more familiar with. Another notable Ethiopian is Ebed-Melech, who is mentioned in Jeremiah 38. This is when Jeremiah, poor thing, he was speaking the truth, and as usual, folks didn't like to hear it, so he was thrown down to the bottom of a cistern. And Ebed-Melech was the one who devised a plan to, tie up cloth together and rescue Jeremiah and pulled him up from that cistern. But what's pretty cool is if you read Jeremiah 38 verse 7, it says Ebed-Melech was an official in the royal palace. So his name literally means servant of the king, but we know he was an official. So think of him as, Secretary of State or maybe a cabinet member or somebody who actually held office within the kingdom of Judah. And he obviously had a kind heart towards the prophet of the Most High. And then, this isn't conclusive, but the prophet Zephaniah, in Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "The word of Yah which came unto Zephaniah, the son of Cushi." Well, we've heard that word before, Cush, and Cushi means their blackness, or my blackness. So I'm just wondering, because, we all know that in Hebrew, the words in the Bible the names in the Bible all meant something. They didn't just name, like my name, I'm sure it has a name somewhere, or a meaning somewhere, but all their names meant something. So here his meant my blackness. So it leads me to believe he may have been perhaps particularly dark. Okay, so we talked about Ham. doing great things, establishing empires, ruling cities, commanding armies. Yay, Ham, okay? And like I said, nobody disputes that Ham was black. All right, move.